is Nathan Hayward. He's the head of the Delaware Development Office. Now, he was educated at Harvard and Stanford, and he worked for the Federal Office of Management and Budget, and also for U.S. Senator William V. Roth. Now, he's been with the DuPont administration as one of his point men since the very beginning back in 1977, and now as the head of the Delaware Development Office, he has a very important position in state government, and it's a pleasure to present Nathan Hayward. Hello, Nathan.
Hi, Bob. How are you?
Okay. Nathan, of course, you were very instrumental in the passing and drafting of the Financial Center Development Act. Why don't you explain basically what it is, and then I'd like to ask you some questions about it.
Sure. The legislation was designed to bring a new industry to Delaware, banking, and banking from out of state, which will provide new jobs and new investment for the state and for its people. Basically what we did was accept the fact that the state of Delaware, or any state for that matter, can't set the price of money. So we abolished the usury ceiling in the state, which had been adjusted by the legislature 6 times in 7 or 8 years as the price of money went up with the economy. Second thing we did was offer an incentive to large banks from out of state to locate here by lowering the taxes that they pay when they get to be very large banks in the state and earn a substantial amount of money. So far it's worked very well. It's bringing jobs, it's bringing tax revenue, and it's bringing a whole new industry to the state.
How do the other banks in Delaware feel about that?
The legislation never would have passed if it hadn't been for the support of Delaware's banks. The Delaware Bankers Association testified in favor of the legislation, worked with us on the drafting of it, and I think they're beginning to see the benefit of new employment in the state. Each one of those employees from the new out-of-state banks will be opening up a local checking account with one of Delaware's existing banks. That's business for Delaware.
Mm-hmm. Now, what about Part 2 in connection with the international banks that you intend to implement next year?
Well, Part 2 is really in the talking stage right now. We figure that there's certainly ample opportunity to attract investment from outside this country, whether it's Canada, Great Britain, France, or wherever. I think there's a growth in the world's banking industry, and we'd like to see some of it happen here in Delaware. There are a couple of hundred foreign banks already in the United States, located in New York largely, in California, some in Florida. We'd like to get at least a little piece of that business by opening our door and saying there's a good place to do business here in Delaware for at least some of that.
Now, the structure of the office that you now head has targeted areas for development, I understand. Would you comment briefly on the areas that are going to be developed and what the plans are?
You're talking about parts of the state, aren't you?
Yes.
All right. One of the things we're going to do is, hopefully in cooperation with the private sector and with many of these new banks, we're going to try to put a new face on downtown Wilmington. You're familiar with the area between the train station, basically, and Government Center. Most of that is vacant land today, has been in the urban renewal category for many, many years. We've formed a corporation known as Christina Gateway Corporation together with the city, and our idea there basically is to help provide the necessary governmental inducement to get private business to locate in that part of town. We think with all of the new banks coming here, there's ample opportunity for that. Up at the other end of Market Street, we did a similar kind of a project with Hercules. The steel is up, they've topped that building out, and I think people in the area are beginning to see what a magnificent new headquarters building that's going to be, and all the new public improvements that are going to go with it, the park, the parking garage, new streets, and what have you. So I think that's going to be a very substantial improvement for the city. Working with Newcastle County, we are helping to develop the airport just down the road here, which has had a tremendous potential for a long time, but we never seem to have been able to really generate the kind of business there. Citibank is coming to Delaware from New York and is going to establish a new operations center there. That building is under construction now. We'll be putting in new roads, new access, many improvements at the airport, again, to try to make that a commercial area. Farther downstate in Dover and in Milford, we are looking for further development. We have a project near Camden, Wyoming, which we think has some possibility for perhaps a foreign trade zone. We'd like to think that the port in Lewis will someday develop. We don't think coal is appropriate, frankly, because of both state law and the economics of it, but we think that there is ample opportunity in Lewis. Georgetown Air Park, where the old military base was during World War II, is beginning to come to life now with the help of Sussex County Council, their economic development program, the state's initiative, and obviously the Port of Wilmington out here on the Christina has had substantial improvement over the years. The new container crane is operational now. We think that that's going to be an excellent opportunity and asset for the state.
Now, before the development, you ran 2 offices. What were they?
Well, I was the acting secretary for Community Affairs and Economic Development while the transition existed. And in my old job, I was running the Office of Management, Budget, and Planning. We asked the legislature to reorganize all of that, change the duties and responsibilities, really put a brand new development office in place in state government in Delaware, which is something that had never been done before. It took a little longer, frankly, than we would have hoped. We proposed the idea January last year. It didn't get adopted until October. So in that 10-month, 11-month period, I wore 2 hats, basically, working to try to reorganize community affairs, give it a new mission, a new direction, put the development office on the map. That's finally happened, and we're well underway.
Now, what's your opinion about coal ports in Delaware? Do you feel that there's a place for coal ports, and if so, where?
Well, coal is very controversial because, of course, it brings with it the connotation of dirt, of noise, of disruption, and what have you. There's no question that coal exports from the United States are on the increase, and they're going to continue to increase, we think, particularly to Europe and to the Far East. Where should it happen if it happens in Delaware? We believe, along with the city, that it should happen at the Port of Wilmington. It's a major commercial port already. It was exempted in 1971 when the Coastal Zone Act was passed from that act in recognition that there need to be certain parts of the state along the Delaware River that have heavy industrial activity. Problems with coal, first of all, it's not particularly labor intensive these days. If you're going to be successful and compete, it has to be highly mechanized. But it will bring new jobs, and it will also bring a substantial amount of new investment and perhaps a throughput tax of some kind, which would help the port and the state grow. We definitely don't think it belongs in the town of Lewis, where a proposal has been floated to build a port there. I was one of the members of the Coastal Zone Industrial Control Board, which voted against that particular proposal. We don't think it belongs elsewhere along the Delaware coast because of our very sincere concern that there are parts of Delaware which really ought to stay as they are. But if it's going to happen, I think it could happen in Wilmington.
Do you see the Coastal Development Act, Coastal Zones Development Act, staying as it is intact, or do you see changes necessary?
Well, there isn't a law that's ever been written that hasn't been changed. Even the Constitution of the United States has been amended, 31 times, I believe. The issue basically is, does Delaware want to continue to protect its coastline? And I think it ought to. I was at the center of some controversy last year at the time that this reorganization took place because people thought, well, if development and coastal protection are going to stay in the same office, there's going to be an inherent conflict. We eventually resolved that by putting the Coastal Zone Administration over in Natural Resources, where it probably belongs. But if you ask me about the Coastal Zone Act, I guess if I were in the sole decision-making position, I'd say strengthen it even more than it is in most parts of the state, certainly south of the C&D Canal. But identify areas that you think are appropriate for development around the Port of Lewis for some limited activity. Certainly at Delaware City, where the Getty plant is already and where there are existing petrochemical complex. The Coastal Zone Act, you see, was passed as a land use bill that said, look, we've got plenty of development along the coast already. We don't want to see any more heavy development. Light manufacturing, fine. Housing, fine. Warehouses, fine. But we don't want to see big steel mills. We don't want to see big petroleum activity. Now, north of the city of Wilmington, certainly, the Coastal Zone Act is really it's passé in the sense that all of that development took place prior to the time that the act was passed. And as my good friend Bob Weiner, senator from that part of the state, once said, if Claymont is the coastal zone, then Marcus Hook is the Riviera. We don't think that having the act necessarily is going to change anything up there. Frankly, it's more of an administrative activity to make minor changes to industry that's already there. But the fundamental purpose of the act is sound. It's been amended once, as you know, to clarify the fact that at least for offshore oil or gas development, we could build onshore support facilities. But I think it served its purpose well for 10 years, and I think it certainly ought to continue. It may have to change at some point in time, but certainly not in this.